We talk a little bit that sales is a science. So the numbers, again, make sure you're measuring the right things that really matter. But if I know as a salesperson that for every 50 calls I make that I get 10 appointments, and for every 10 appointments I get like 5 potentials and 2 closes, it becomes really scientific. You can start to see those numbers and go, oh, I can see how that plays out. And if we can help you by, maybe we get you an assistant salesperson so you can get 200 calls in. So now you can do, in theory, twice as many closes at the end of, like if the equation works out. That's when we talk about sales as a science.
We're all Mavericks.
Welcome to Momish Mavericks.
With your hosts, Maynard and Breslow.
We're Oline and Gayrim.
And we're also entrepreneurs and marketers.
October 7th changed everything,
including the way we do business.
This is the show that realigns your business and goals
with your values and people. Welcome back to Momish Mavericks. Today we're joined by Erin Hoffman. Erin is a partner and senior consultant here at Collaboration Business Consulting. Thanks for joining us, Erin.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. And a lot of great stuff we'll be talking about today. A lot of stuff that I find to be very passionate about. I'm very passionate about this stuff. First and foremost, talking about KPIs. It's not the, the sexiest subject in the world, but it's something that all businesses need, obviously. So we're talking about this, how key performance indicators are really the key to measuring our business and how well it's doing and understanding it, and not just following our gut and what we think the weather, the universe, whatever wants from us, God, and just knowing that for sure, we're on the right track, right? So talking about that, we're talking about sales. Something else that I'm very passionate about. Sales is a science, and how to really think about your business development strategy from the ideal client perspective, from the profiles, and how to optimize with the lead generation activities and measuring them. That's an amazing thing. And also talking about, I think, something that we can all get caught up in is this obsession with this entrepreneur mindset, and how, as you said, being an entrepreneur is killing your business, meaning sometimes we have to shift our thinking from that entrepreneurial mindset and startup and, bootstrapping and wearing many hats, and being able to transition that into actually owning a business and delegating and keeping KPIs and knowing what you're doing and having people around you who are better than you and all that kind of fun stuff as well, right? So a lot of really cool stuff to talk about today. I appreciate it. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, tell me a little bit about yourself and, your background and kind of what's led to Collaboration Business Consulting.
Oh, yeah. First, thanks for having me. I'm excited for the conversation today. A little background about us, Collaboration Business Consulting. We are a business consulting firm in California. We've been working with business owners over 20 years and working specifically with folks that have been in business for a little while and when they get stuck and how to get to that next level. I came to Collaboration about 15 years ago, and ironically, from a background in psychology, working with people, but early in my career, just found that I wanted to work more on the business side than on the the counseling side. So went into business, and then eventually parlayed that into consulting. So I haven't looked back ever since.
That's great. I'm actually also psych background, I guess. What did that look like? I mean, was it something that you always kind of felt passionate about business and wanted to have that, kind of in your back pocket, or is it some sort of outside force that kind of brought you into this crazy world that we find ourselves in?
Oh, yeah, that's a great
question. I guess the second part is, how does psych play into it at all,
Yeah. How does that play in? So I grew up, in an entrepreneurial family. My dad was a business owner. The home line was the main business line. There's paying bills and doing taxes at the kitchen table. I mean, it was just a constant part of that small business mindset of talking about employee issues or taxes, all of that stuff. So that's really been, I think, part of in my blood. And so when it came to really where I can make the biggest impact and where I'm passionate about, it's helping business owners. And it's interesting. You ask, where does the psychology piece come in? I always joke around with leaders, it's like, management would be easy if it wasn't for all the people. It's if anytime you have two people in the room, you're going to have dynamics and communication, and that's all psychology. So that's really a business owner needs to be able to leverage and get results through others. And so the folks that can successfully do that and inspire their teams are the ones that are successful in business.
And this is a Jewish podcast, so as we say, you get two Jews in the room, you get three opinions. So you get two Jewish business owners in a room. Those dynamics they become astronomical. They
Yeah, it's
whole
like
another thing.
compounding.
You definitely need a lot of psych there with that. So no, it's good. It's good stuff. And yeah, I think coming from that, right, seeing your parents, same thing. I came from the same kind of raised in different businesses and seeing my parents, doing well and sometimes not doing well and all that kind of stuff and kind of being set up for that kind of experience as well. And I'm sure that shaped you as well. Did that kind of give you a little bit of insight to what you're doing now in terms of what we're talking about, shifting that entrepreneurial mindset to having like a business mindset?
Absolutely. I mean, I see, from, early on as a kid, like seeing the things that, my folks would struggle with. And I remember my dad did amazing work, and he would grow to a certain size. And then it would get to the point where it was kind of outgrow his capacity, and he'd say, I have too many employees, I'm actually making less money, I'm spending more time on headaches. And then his business would shrink down again. And then it would go through that phase again. It would get more business, he'd grow, he'd get too many employees, have the headaches, making less profit, and it would shrink down again. So he could never quite get to that next level.
Hmm.
And that's really where at Collaboration Business Consulting, that's the heart of what we do, of really helping folks get to past that next level of growth. And there's different stages that happen, at just before that first million. It happens again at a couple million. It will follow the number of employees that you have. But business owners and entrepreneurs either will grow and grow beyond that to that next level, or they hit that ceiling and then they go back down, like my dad used to. Of that's too frustrating, I'm not making a profit, and they shrink back down. And so it's hard for the business to grow.
Yeah, I guess, I think it becomes hard to identify, I would say, sometimes when you're like in the thicket, right? You're there in the middle of it, and it's hard to kind of like have that outside perspective. Now, you help people with that outside perspective. Now, for
Mhm.
somebody who, let's say, transporting back to maybe where your dad was, or, in that situation, I guess, maybe wasn't keeping track of KPIs, but is there some sort of thing that you see across the board with this kind of entrepreneur mindset where somebody could say, you could tell somebody like, when this is kind of happening, when you're feeling like this, it's time to kind of look for help. It's time to see
Mhm.
that you've kind of hit a wall, or this is, now's where you're kind of going to be running into more issues. Is there something that you've seen, obviously every business is very, very different, different sectors, everything like that, but what can someone like in the thicket of it kind of be like, oh, I remember hearing that podcast. Erin said that when I'm thinking these kind of things,
When I hit
now it's
this,
time to reach
yeah,
out.
yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. And I think no matter what type of business, what industry you're in, a lot of business owners get there because they're hardworking and they're scrappy and they're entrepreneurial and they figure it out. And where I think that turning point is when you can't leverage any more hours in the day. You can't clone yourself, and you find yourself usually, I hear from business owners, they're saying, who do I give my notice to? It's not fun anymore. They're feeling burned out.
You
They're working these long 7 days a week, long hour days. And that usually is your sign that there's an opportunity. What got you to that point is how hard you worked. And you're trying to get past that by working even harder. And
yeah.
the switch is you have to get results through others. And so it's making, and you might not be at a point where you can hire somebody or hire somebody full time. There's always ways that you can start to leverage other people's talents, other people's time, but it's really shifting how you're thinking, and how, instead of I'm the best one at doing this, of, like, who else can I get to, help me grow this business?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's all kinds of different thought patterns that go along with that as well, right? Where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, if I hire somebody, going to lose on the margin, like you're talking about with your parents and their experience, and
Yeah.
or like you said, I'm the best at doing this. Who else is going to be able to do it better than me? Or I know this
Hmm.
system, or I know this product better than anybody else. And there's lack of trust there, giving over. Is there any one kind of mentality that you think is like easier to kind of shed, or something that you think is a little bit harder, that you see people kind of struggling with a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's hard. It depends on the person of what that thing is for them that, it's usually it's what they do best, and that's going to be the hardest thing to give up. What I do with business owners is I have them sit down and write down all the things they're doing. And then I instead of saying, who can I delegate this to? I say, what are the things that only, like, could somebody besides you do this? If they were trained, if you had that person in place, if you had, the smart or the right person, and really figuring out if that person was in place, could somebody besides me do this? And there's some things that the answer is no, right? For your podcast, you need to be the voice, you need to be the person out front, but could somebody be helping you schedule? Could somebody be helping you, do follow-ups? There are things somebody else could be doing besides you. So that sometimes gets that mindset because you don't have the person to give it off to yet, or that person's not trained yet. That can really help you start to realize, okay, eventually I can start working in this direction to start shifting some of these things off. For a lot of early, depending on what stage you're in, sometimes it's, a virtual assistant. Sometimes it's just for another person, it might be delegating and getting a bookkeeper part time. There's all kinds of different ways to make that work. For sometimes it's you have the employee and it's just, hey, I need to invest in some training to show this person how to do it.
Yeah, no, amazing. Yeah, definitely. Knowing what to delegate, when to delegate, and how are people doing with it. I think one of the things we mentioned here is, with KPIs, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
hiring, sometimes you have to work out those. I mean, what do you mean? Sometimes you have to work out those kind of KPIs beforehand, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of times that's where I would imagine people get stuck on the hiring process, is or why they hire the wrong people, or why they keep the wrong people,
Mm-hmm.
or that kind of stuff, is they haven't kind of worked out those KPIs, and they just hire, oh, I like this person, they're great,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, well, I want
Yeah.
to give them a chance, and I can hire them and train them, and they never get anywhere, and it's just a cycle, and then that's the frustration, right? Like, well, I could have done it, why did I bring this person on,
Yeah.
right? How does a person go from zero to KPI, right? How do they go from
Yeah.
not knowing how much they're even spending every month to now all of a sudden every single thing is being measured? And what does that process even look like?
That's a great question. So KPI, or key performance indicator, is really, as I like to think of it, as it's your speedometer on your car. You're driving, you need to know how fast am I going, and also and it's good to know what that speed limit sign is. Like, am I going above or below the speed limit? And every business, there's a lot of things that are common for every business, like profitability, sales numbers, but there's some that are very unique to your business and your goals. So let's say you find that person and you are going to hire them. How will you know that they're successful? So the mistake a lot of folks make is they say, what can I measure? And then there's a ton of stuff you can measure. You can measure all day long. But how will I know I'm successful? And so if I hire this person, how will I know it's going well? Maybe there's a salesperson that my sales numbers should go up. Or, if I have some business owners that it's really about them just getting some of their life back.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, hey, I'm not answering text messages on Saturdays and Sundays. Maybe that's their, like, whatever that is, like, how will they know that it's working and they're successful? So that's, I think that if you could start to really think about those things first instead of what do I need to measure?
So that's good then. So that's good. I think that it you kind of reverse engineer, right? Like, what are the major things, as opposed to here comes Erin with her box of KPIs, and like these are
Yeah.
open up, and like here are the things we have to get in order, and there may very well be a lot of them that are kind of standard, right? But really, talking to each business owner and being like, well, what are the main things that are important to you? What would you like to
Mhm.
see different today? And then kind of developing, okay, well, that means that we need to be able to handle these text messages. Either somebody else needs to handle them during the weekdays, or all the time, so you're not handling them at all, or all these kind of things, and kind of reverse going there. I
Mhm.
guess as well, right? What are the kind of things that the common metrics that we should be paying attention to, and what are the common mistakes associated with that?
Yeah, so I think the I'll start with the mistakes. I had one client that they would get a report with all these numbers and they would actually start calling it the mother, and they threw an extra word in there of all spreadsheets because there was so much data that they didn't even know what they were looking at. So number
Mm,
one thing is, keep it simple. Keep it
I
really
knew
to
you were
the
going to say
main
that.
things. Yeah. Keep it simple. Keep it really how will you know that the business is doing well? The revenue or your sales numbers is a very common one for most all businesses. Your costs, and then if you have labor costs or material costs, that one's an important one. And then the profitability, that those are pretty common across any business. And then depending on the type of business, a restaurant might be looking at what's the average cover per table, or how many visitors are they having, per some of your podcast is going to have, how many followers, how many people are subscribed, what's that. There's lots of different things that we could be looking at of how do we know that we're moving in the right direction. For some businesses, looking at what some of those the important costs that they're really trying to keep down. So I have some folks that are really keeping a close eye on like overtime or material costs or things like gas prices, like all of those things, depending on if that's going to be really impacting your bottom line. That's something to pay attention to.
That's great. And I think, you mentioned that you've been with them for 15 years, right? In this position.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously KPIs sometimes don't change, sometimes they do change, right? When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to new technology, different environments, different situations, but also in terms of the employees that are around, that are coming in. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I've seen personally as a business owner over the years is that's newer is kind of employees having a resistance to KPIs, right? Like newer kind
Mm-hmm.
of employees. Then before it was like, yeah, of course we're going to measure some stuff and whatever. And is that something you see
Yeah.
as well? How have you seen kind of this change, and how have you helped business owners navigate through kind of how maybe the hiring process has changed over the years, or how how employees, I guess, have changed, newer graduates and people who are newer to the.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, there's a couple things in that question. And I'll start with for employees, what we found, regardless of generation, that every generation has their top performers and they have a few duds, right? In every generation, we can claim that. What we found is, if you find somebody that's motivated and wants to do a good job, top performers are usually motivated by the numbers, especially if you're using it as learn, like, hey, this is what it is, what are we learning from it, versus a
Mhm.
punishment, like, hey, you didn't hit this number. Nobody wants to get beat over the head with a KPI. But so I think that knowing that top performers want to be held accountable, and so having real conversations around, great, how do we get you there, what do we need to improve, what's working, what's not working, including them in the conversation. These numbers are there to give the business owner and the employees real data about what's working and what's not working. So it's really just a data point for you to improve your business. And I think if you can share that with your employees, it does pay off. Where I see people are resistant is either when they're unsure, like how will this be used, or they feel like it's going to be kind of weaponized.
Mhm.
They can have a negative reaction, or maybe they've experienced that in the past. So I think if a business owner, works with their employees, they can really get them involved and actively trying to improve. The other thing is if they're not measuring the right thing, so getting the buy-in of, is this really telling us what we think it's telling us? If the employees are
Mhm.
bought into that, they're more likely to be invested too.
That's a good point. I think sometimes as well, like KPIs are just introduced for the sake of having KPI. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, well, here's this, and it's like, like you said, what is this really measuring? How does this really talk about the performance of the job that I'm
Can I
doing for what
impact
you
it?
hired me
Yeah.
to do? It's
Yeah.
like, how many capsules of coffee I use doesn't really, it's not going to tell you anything, of how I'm doing in the workforce. And it sounds like a silly
Mm-hmm.
example, but you'd be surprised on some of the stuff, right? That people are expected to kind of like, okay, I guess.
Track.
Yeah, to track and keep track of, especially like in the sales world, right? I know that one of the main issues that sales professionals have our KPIs specifically, right? They talk about,
Mm-hmm.
or tracking anything, right? It's like, well, I mean, listen, like I'm doing my own stuff, and you should care about the revenue side, like how much money I'm bringing in. I'm bringing a lot of money. Like, get off my back already. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why you want me to fill out Salesforce? It's like the most common, like, sales joke. I don't want to
Yeah.
fill out anything on Salesforce. Stop talking about Salesforce. Talking about my numbers last quarter
Hmm.
because those were amazing. And can't we just stick to
Hmm.
that? Has that also been kind of a trend? And if I guess it's like, is that a good argument? We're bringing a lot of money, right? So what are you worried about KPIs for?
Yeah, exactly. I think that whatever the equivalent, for cavemen of Salesforce, that the beginning of time, the the cave
Yeah,
salespeople were
exactly.
like, yeah. So it's common, very common thing. Again, we talk a little bit that sales is a science, and so the numbers, again, make sure you're measuring the right things that really matter. But if I know as a salesperson that for every 50 calls I make, that I get 10 appointments, and for every 10 appointments I get like 5 potentials and 2 closes, it becomes really scientific. You can start to see those numbers and go, oh, I can see how that plays out. And if we can help you by, maybe we get you an assistant salesperson so you can get 200 calls in, so now you can do, in theory, twice as many closes at the end of, like, if the equation works out. That's when we talk about sales as a science. Really, it's not so much about creating extra work, but understanding what is the process and what are our ratios, like what are our close percentages, how many closes do we get out of these proposals that we do. It allows you to really strategically think about, oh, if I can improve that by 5%, this is how much more I could be potentially selling. How could I improve that by 5%? How could I be doing, oh, it looks like we're not doing follow-ups. If we are better about our follow-ups, could we include those ratios? So um, it can be, I always try to find, again, keep it simple. We don't want to spend more time tracking than what it actually, the data that we're getting. But if you can get that data, it can be extremely valuable for, both. You got what's in it for me, right? We get what's in it for the business owner, but also what's in it for that salesperson. It's a win-win. If they can improve their sales, they potentially be making more.
Yeah, no, for
Kind of,
sure. And I
kind of a
well,
long answer there, but
no, I mean it's great,
yeah.
because really as well as we talked about the changing and kind of generations and everything, and
Hmm.
also something that's changed is the tech. It's been the tech, right, and the
Hmm.
systems, right. I mean, once I'm sure 15 years ago, the way you keep track of the data or the way that you follow up is different from today, right? I mean, how have like
Yes.
those systems improved today? Maybe on like automating that follow up, right? Not something that
Hmm.
necessarily a person has to go and do automatically, and things are falling through the cracks. Excuse
Yeah.
me. Different ways that that sales process has gotten easier over the last 15 years that you've seen with different systems or ways that you've helped business owners implement new systems.
That's a great question. It's such an opportunity, and it can be a curse too. It's
Hmm.
that there's so many things that technology will do, and so many, like never before. I see more really cost effective, inexpensive software that can really streamline business. Um, so the opportunity is, when done well, you can really automate a lot of these steps and processes. Uh, and that's where it takes the owner taking some time to really, carve out some strategy time to think about, how do I want to get this set up. On the flip side, there's so many options that I see a lot of business owners get just caught up in trying to do too many softwares, or
Hmm.
starting one and then switching to something else and switching to something else because the new hotness. And that's
Yeah.
going to just burn a lot of time. So it really goes back to first really understanding, what am I trying to accomplish? And, when we work on this with clients, we'll even just really simple whiteboard, like, what is the flow that we're trying to get? And then we'll
Hmm.
find the software that's going to like fit the needs, be the best fit for the needs, instead of going and chasing after the newest, awesome, software that's out there, because there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I think that goes back to that like entrepreneur mindset or kind of the shiny object syndrome, right? Where
Yeah.
something comes out, oh, well, that must be it. Everybody's running to that, and everybody that's running from
Hmm.
this to that to this. For me, I've always, even when it comes to like phones or TVs, I don't want like the brand new one. I want the one from like a couple years ago with no bugs. I know it's stable. Everything is still
Hmm.
new, still got all the new operating system, all that stuff. But I see now, right? And I've been in marketing for over a decade, and how many things have come out over the last 10 years that like where are they? Like where are they?
Hmm.
And then they come around with a different thing. Like chatbots
Yeah.
just a few years ago were like the biggest thing, and now it's just like, well, AI chatbots, of course, like this is now and it's like, yes, I see they serve a huge purpose. And then I also see people are really pissed off about their, the support that they're getting, and feel like you're losing customers because you're not letting anybody talk to another human anymore. So like
Mm-hmm.
these kind of things, right? So I guess along those lines with sales specifically, it's something that I'm really interested in and really love, and I hear about, sales is science. I believe the same thing, right? Sales is science, in the sense that like, it is a process. Sales calls should generally look and sound the same kind of way, and there's obviously a lot of variances but ultimately, we're going to have the same kind of roadmap, and we're going to have the same kind of cadence, and, we're going to shuffle between a limited number of objections or whatever else
Mm-hmm.
going on, right? But I think also one thing that's lost, and I think it plays a part in what we're talking about here with, AI, and you use automation, AI, all these kind of things. But just like sales is a number game. And I think
Mm-hmm.
along with different kinds of ways we implement the AI or the technology, I think kind of like dehumanizes the prospect on the other side, where like I've seen numbers, skyrocket just when I enter in a different kind of human touch, right? Instead of just like, hello, I have your email because I scraped it and I'm going to now pitch you something immediately. And here's a link.
Mm-hmm.
Will you please buy it? Hey, I'm sending you an email again that you didn't ask for, but why didn't you buy my thing last time? Or why didn't you
Yeah.
schedule a call with me? Oh, here's the third time. And you're just like, well, if you send out 100 of those, you'll get like 3 yeses, and it's like, or you could
Mm-hmm.
actually talk to them and somehow you get a lot more than that, right? I mean,
You get a
have
lot more
you,
yeses. Yeah.
a lot more yeses, right? And it's just like, I think people have this mentality of like, sales is a science, sales is a
Mm-hmm.
numbers game, means I should just be burning through all kinds of leads all the time. Right. And I just need more leads, more leads, more leads. I just need to be able to send
Yeah.
out more leads. And by the end, I'll be able to make some money. Where do you stand on
Mm-hmm.
that aspect of just the numbers and the process and all that kind of stuff, and how can we humanize it more, which I think people are kind of desperate for. They want to have human
Yeah.
connection, but they don't. We're at this trust recession, as I've been hearing. Trust recession where no one, everyone, who are you, why are you in my inbox, I don't want to talk to you, and
Yeah.
then
People
be
can
able to make
sniff
a
that out
connection.
pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. We work with lots of different industries, and there's not a single one that isn't part of their sales strategy isn't about creating those trusted relationships. And so just, yeah, blanketing, mass emailing, that isn't the best strategy. One of the things that we always like business owners to do is, who is your ideal client profile, and really understanding like, who is that? I could send out an email to 1,000 people, but if I know 10 of those are actually the ones that are going to be really receptive and benefit from what I have to offer, like, isn't it better to just make 10 personal connections? I'm going to have much more impact and potential sales from doing that. So understanding who you're reaching out to, it's like if you're hunting ducks, go to a duck pond, don't go to the desert. You want to make sure that you're actually getting in front of those folks. And then people want to do business with who they like and trust. So if you're really narrowing and know who you're talking to, and then it gives you that opportunity to have those real conversations that in developing those relationships. So it's a great example I've seen working with an engineering company, and they say, well, where does your business come from? Well, they get their business from architects and construction general contractors. It's like, well, great, you don't need to do a big blanket email to everybody. Reach out to those guys, reach out to those connections you already have and schedule a coffee. Go make a connection. They're going to get more business from that one connection than if they're trying to send out a bunch of social media or email marketing or different things like
And
that.
I think the way you utilize the tools, right? It could be using social media, or email marketing, and it's not just like, well, the AI told me that you went to Florida, so go Gators. Like, I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
actually being able to create like a conversation out of it somehow, as
exactly.
opposed
Yeah.
to a pitch. And I think that these are the kind of things that we're missing, as we've sometimes say, the shoemaker's kids go shoeless, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
Bing, collaboration, business consulting. You're helping there, consulting other people, and helping them change their business, turn their business around. I guess what are the kind of things, and it's sometimes you see that they have a blind spot. I guess with collaboration, business consulting, what are kind of the things that you're maybe implementing to continue to grow, or that's a little bit different from before?
Great question. It's one of the things that we were in a team meeting just before this call, and we were actually looking at our own sales process
Mm,
because what we found is it we because we hadn't talked about it in a while, everybody's starting to do their own thing. We all have,
mm,
like different personalities. So it's like, well, Erin likes to do it this way and Michael likes to do it this way. And so just sitting down and saying, great, after the initial call, here's what should happen. Here's the follow-up that should happen. Then when we get face to face, here's the what we should be asking. Here's what we want that person walking away feeling. So literally, like right before this meeting, we were having that conversation just to recenter. And then that's the opportunity to say, okay, where can AI maybe help us streamline some of the follow-up, some of the thank you, so great meeting with you emails. We can make that easier and more consistent with technology, but also that frees us up to have more of those personable conversations. So that's one thing. I think every business is always focusing on sales and how to bring business in. Another thing that we're currently looking at this year is, how to keep our messaging fresh and how to keep our messaging where it actually speaks to our ideal client. So if you're looking for the type of service that we offer, how do we make sure that when you see our website or see an email or see a post from us that it resonates and it's like, okay, I get what they do. So that's something as business owners, we know what we do, but sometimes it can be hard to make sure that it's coming across clearly of like, this is something that could really benefit you. And it doesn't have to benefit everybody in the world, just that person that's your ideal.
yeah, that's amazing. And to your point, I think when we connected, I really got a kick out of your website because it seemed like it was just somebody talking to me.
Oh, good.
And then at the bottom where it's like, hey, let's go grab a coffee or L'Chaim's, you didn't say L'Chaim's, but it was something to that effect, like the cocktail or something. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's great. We're humans.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? We always just making everything now just so digital and going out and meeting somebody and talking, getting some coffee or going out for a cocktail. And this is really how business deals are being made, right? And this is the way they've always
Yeah.
kind of been made. And we get away from that and wonder why business is down. Well, we gotta get out there, kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess what is the kind of biggest obstacle that you're feeling that you're facing in terms of kind of making those connections that you found? That's great. You're improving the sales. That's amazing. I guess what's kind of the biggest obstacle they're facing in terms of making those kind of those.
That's a great question. I think that the challenge that we face and a lot of businesses that we work with face is how to scale that. For myself, I've been there 15 years, so there's a lot of knowledge there and experience. Michael, our founder, Michael Gunther, has been doing it even longer than I have. So how do you take that knowledge and then pass that on and build up that next generation of, adding a new consultant to our team so they feel that the confidence of getting out there and selling. And we feel it too, right? We're like, oh, I don't know if you're ready. You haven't been doing this as long as we have. But in order to grow and scale and have impact on more people, we've got to prepare her to be out there and getting ready, talking to folks. And so we face it too, we feel it too, but that's the barrier of how do we really invest in our people so they are prepared to get out there and represent the business and broaden our reach.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and then, like you said, always planning. We always have to be planning for the future, and I'm sure you encounter that a lot with companies that maybe be very well ran, but now it's time for to start leaving it over to the next generation, a younger
Yeah.
generation, and setting them up and ensuring that things continue and they progress while kind of maintaining those values and the core tenets of the company, right? And here we are, Momish Mavericks. It's a Jewish podcast talking to Jewish entrepreneurs. And while I'm observant, religious, whatever that may mean, right? This isn't about religion. It's about, I think, kind of the values that kind of combine us. Or I'm fascinated by how different Jews around the world, how they relate to Judaism and how they relate it back to their
Mhm.
business. So what are those kind of core tenets of the company that you feel that you kind of connect with as well with your Judaism, with your own relationship with Judaism in your own way?
It's a great question. I love how you're connecting back, like what values at our core, at our religion, like how we were raised and how we bring that into our business and how we bring that into how we interact with people every day. It really is core, and being able to translate that to the next generation of business, or that even to an employee. It's, if you haven't already, as a business owner, of really looking deep of like, what is it in every interaction that I want, how do I want to be represented? How do I want to be interacting with my clients? What kind of reputation do I want? And it goes down to the core of who you are, right? If you haven't been able to put that down on paper, I encourage your listeners to do that, because it can be really powerful in helping make decisions. It can be powerful in helping train folks on your team of how you want them to interact. Our top value, our number one value, is relationship centered, and you picked up on it. I love on our website of, let's go grab a coffee or grab a cocktail. Like if we run into an issue or a challenge with a client, we go back and say, all right, let's be relationship centered first. We'll figure out the other parts, but if we care about the relationship, the other pieces will like work itself out. I don't know. I hope that answered your question, but
Yeah,
I think
no,
it is
definitely. I think,
so pivotal.
relationships are so much as community relationships, and how
Mm-hmm.
we kind of cultivate those and grow those in a way
Yeah.
that's, mutually beneficial for everybody. And I think is something that, is so important to both business and in Judaism. And that's once again, one of the things that we can lose, especially as we become reconnected with technology and stuff. Whereas, with different Jewish communities, whether they be different levels of observance or different places that they've most recently been on the map, or anything else, or how one dresses or the other, it's like building those relationships are the most important thing, right? The same kind of thing, with businesses. Instead of looking at the business from, okay, well, this one is a legacy business, and this one here is, a B2B business, and this one here is a startup, and this guy's just in over his head, and this one, I mean, you may have to identify those kind of issues, but at the same time, to understand that, we in order to build these businesses, we're gonna have to develop those relationships, and we're gonna have to make them stronger, and view them as people, and while kind of bringing together these common practices that we've known or valuable to all businesses, kind of thing, right? So combining all those
Yeah,
together.
I love that, because it at the end of the day, I think as we get in this, like, such high technology and now AI, we become, further and further disconnected. And the more it it's so recognizable when it's like, hey, I care about you as a person.
Mhm.
I want to see that you're doing well. It might not be about my business. I'm just, like, it goes back to those tenets of community. Like, hey, how can I help you? How could we work on something that's beneficial for both of us? Those are the people you want to do business with. Those are the people that maybe you don't do a business at that moment. Maybe you just make a connection for them, but they remember that. And that's who comes back and does business with you. That people want to do business with who they like and trust, and who's in their community. That's who I want to do business with and refer out. So I think the more, sometimes the folks that haven't been in his business as long, I think that it's just going to be this, like, I can just do a bunch of like, if I really have the right technology, then I can get all these leads and make all this money. And
Mhm.
like life, everything's about the relationship, what you put out there, and the connections that you're making. You probably see, I know you've lived all over the world, of how interconnected we truly are, and you never know how you're going to come back around, see people again.
That's one of the things that I love about having lived in many different places, from a young age, and seeing, because
Hmm.
I didn't get to actually get too stuck into one thing and to think, well, these people are right and these people are wrong. Because when you move around as a kid and you see, well, these people seem to be pretty right and these seem to be pretty right, but they think completely different things and have completely different cultures.
Hmm.
Like, it's not about
Yeah.
being right or wrong. It's about, people having different ways about going about the same thing and achieving similar results, complete different, in a different
Hmm.
way. And seeing that, it becomes a running joke where it's like, like my wife is, we call it, she's Calipina, right? But she's Filipina, and my half of my family is Hispanic and Mexican, and so my dad's, he's like, Tove's family, they're just like, the Filipinos are almost like Mexicans, they have the same kind of culture and the same kind of, blood in their veins. And it just becomes like it's like, yeah, Dad, like that's, we're around the world, so it's, that's what we kind of get to see, that we all kind of carry with us, that we all have the same human experience and same human
Hmm.
problems, and we just have different ways of solving them, of coping with them, dealing with them, kind of thing. And
For sure.
that's what makes us human. And I really appreciate you coming on today. I guess, is there anything else with the collaboration business consulting that we haven't talked about, or anything in the future have coming up that you feel comfortable sharing with us today?
I'd recommend if any of these things resonated. Our founder wrote a book. It's called Me to We by Michael Gunther. It really talks a lot about some of the things that we talked about today about sales as science and that entrepreneurial mindset and how it might get in the way of building your business. So that's definitely a resource I'd send out for listeners. And that otherwise, I just really enjoyed the conversation that we've had today.
I mean, tell our listeners, aside from the book, how they can get in contact with you, find out more about what you're doing, seek out your services, and help their businesses as well.
Yeah, it's you can find us online, collaboration-llc.com. And we have a full resource center. There's white papers and videos that's for business owners. So hopefully find something to help you out that'll resonate. So definitely visit our resource center online.
Love it, love it. Yeah, everybody check that out. We have some links here for you, wherever you're listening, whether it be on YouTube or podcasts or on our website. We'll have the links here for you in the description here. So check that out and reach out to Erin and everything they got going on. So amazing, Erin. Appreciate you once again. So in any case, Sarah give you a bracha, so you should be a zoich. You should have the merit to continue to see those relationships build, to be able to build relationships with other people, like-minded people, and people who maybe aren't like-minded, and be able to make that connection and helping them to be more successful in their endeavors and what they're doing. And of course, seeing yourself also succeed in more and more and more.
Thank you.
Thank you.